Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm hoping this holds. The internet has been a little spotty here, so if it gets a little laggy, I apologize. I'm going to try to keep this video relatively quick though, because my other videos went far longer than I wanted, and I had several shows that I wanted to get to today. And it's sorry with it. So Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. Now, just to hop across the pond for the moment, Jeremy Corbyn has been going through what you can say a row. They call it a row, an anti-Semitism row. They've called him every name but a child of God from the standpoint of being anti-Semitic, including Mary Hodge walking up on him and like a screaming lunatic calling him a fucking anti-Semite. None of this has any reality to it. Meaning, it's the very act of screaming fire and hoping that somebody calls a fire truck. There is not an ounce of anti-Semitism that any of them have ever been able to show, prove, or declare. They wanted Jeremy Corbyn to accept a rule set, a definition of anti-Semitism that would constrain a certain degree of criticism on Israel. That's the beginning and end of all of this. Ultimately, you have elements of labor joining forces with elements of the Jewish lobby who hates his guts because he's sympathetic to Palestine and said that he would call for a two-state solution on day one when he takes office, or call it a state, call Palestine a country, or recognize it as a country, something to that effect, on the day he takes office. Now, on Facebook, they've been getting rid of Palestinian groups at the behest of the Israeli government. Jeremy Corbyn, the very act, or the very fact, that he's willing to do that, and that he's sympathetic to Palestine, makes him essentially an enemy of Israel in this weird way. Israel hates that. They hate it. They've been working with the Blairites to get him out and to weaken him in his role as leader. There's no reality to this. I've watched the story with a certain degree of fascination, hoping that the people in Britain look at this and say this is utter nonsense. The people in the United States look at what the media has been talking about with the idea of Trump in Russia for the past 2.5 years. And even though they may say, okay, there may be something there, ultimately when you look at the polls, they don't care. I think it was like 1% of the population was moved by 2.5 years devoted to this by media. Yes, you got people to kind of believe that something might have been there. No, they don't believe that it had any effect. And no, they don't care. I was hoping that the same thing was relatively true in the UK. I've done multiple stories about this, and I'm not alone. At this point, I've been joined by some big hitters. Chomsky Varoufakis, I guess this is letters to the Guardian. Flaw reporting on anti-Semitism claim against Labour Party. Chomsky, Varoufakis, Lioch, Brian Eno, Des Friedman, Justin Schlossberg, and 21 others write about the recent reports in the Media Reform Coalition. I've been joined by big names. Other people are noticing. Your coverage of Jeremy Corbyn, media in the UK, and to some degree infected even in the United States, has been atrocious, has been completely and utterly atrocious, and apparently people have started to notice. I just read it out. We've long had serious concerns about the lack of due impartiality and accuracy in the reporting of the allegations of anti-Semitism against Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. The recent report by Media Reform Coalition examining coverage of Labour's revised code of conduct on anti-Semitism shows we were right to be concerned. The research shows over 250 articles in broadcast news segments and found over 90 examples of misleading or inaccurate reporting. In relation to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that was at the heart of the dispute, because understand, they were calling him an anti-Semite because he wouldn't accept the IHRA quote-unquote standard that wasn't a standard at all. It wasn't a standard at all. Definition of anti-Semitism at the heart of the dispute. The research found evidence of overwhelming source imbalance in which critics of Labour's code of conduct dominated the coverage, with nearly 50% of The Guardian's reports, for example, failing to include any quotes from those defending the code or critiquing the IHRA definition. Moreover, key contextual facts about the IHRA definition, for example, that it has only been formally adopted by 8 countries and only 6 of the IHRA member states, were consistently excluded. The researchers conclude that those were not occasional lapses in judgment, but systemic reporting failures that served to weaken the Labour leadership and to bolster its opponents within and outside of the party. It is, of course, entirely appropriate and necessary for the major news outlets to report on the horrors of anti-Semitism, but wrong to present it as an issue specific to the Labour Party. In covering the allegations that Labour is now institutionally anti-Semitic, quote-unquote, there have been inaccuracies, clear distortions, and revealing omissions across the most popular media platforms. We believe that significant parts of the UK media have failed their audiences by producing flawed reports that have contributed to an undeserved witch hunt against Labour leadership and misdirected public attention away from anti-Semitism elsewhere, including on the far right, which is ascendant in much of Europe. Do you know that they're having Nazi rallies in the Ukraine right now? Maybe not at this very moment, but within the last few weeks. But we're talking about anti-Semitism in the UK. Yeah, I mean in Labour. Signatories: Professor Noam Chomsky, Brian Eno, Francesca Martinez, Yanis Varoufakis, Ken Leosh, Raul Martinez, Justin Schlossberg, Professor Des Friedman, Professor Imogen Tyler, Professor Aaron Davis, Professor Annabelle Shribberny, Professor Greg Philo, Professor Natalia Fenton, Professor David Miller, Professor David Hezmondlah. I apologize, David. I am butchering that last name. Professor James Curran, Professor Julian Petley, Professor Stephen Cushion, Jason Hickle, Enar Thorson, Mike Burry, thank you Mike Burry for having an easy name, Tom Mills, Lenny Manson, Leigh Levin, Lindsay German, Mike Cushman, Glenn Secker. Yeah, people are beginning to notice. So, I'll end this here. I don't want to keep this one long. Alright, guys. Let's see. Yeah, I'll end this here. I don't want this one to be long, and 8 minutes is actually pretty good for me. So, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. I did a video on this prior. If you want me to go through the article itself.